And now it's my pleasure to introduce to you our speaker today, who is Ron Frost, my classroom companion in getting our license together with Reverend Shell. Yes, Ron is an author and a speaker, a life coach, and a sales coach. He is also a licensed spiritual practitioner that studied under Reverend Shell at the Center for Spiritual Living here in Cape Coral, and is now based out of the Center of Spiritual Living in Sarasota. Ron's popular book, Getting Unstuck, I think we still have some of that out in the bookstore too, anybody's interested. The 9 Keys to Creating More Prosperity, Fulfillment, and Joy is a practical self-coaching guide to help the reader live a more self-aware and empowered life. He and his book have been featured on numerous podcasts as well as AM and FM radio talk shows across the nation. He's the founder of Positive Momentum Coaching, a leader of the Southwest Florida Speakers Toastmasters Club, and a former member of our own center's Leadership Council. Ron's biggest love is his family, which is comprised of his beautiful wife, Fani, right here next to him. Hi, Fani. So wonderful to have you here today. 2 amazing daughters, Nicole and Ashley, and 3 dogs and 2 cats. And however, technically speaking, it might be actually 3 cats, because about 7 days ago, skinny, frail calico female with a beautiful purr showed up at the Frost home on their doorstep, and despite numerous efforts, they haven't yet been able to find its owner. So Ron is calling her Peaches. And without more ado, I will ask Ron to come step up here and give your beautiful, powerful message. Thank you.
Thank you. There was actually one more amazing announcement, and that is, this is some breaking news that I really, really wanted to share at this moment, is I just signed an awesome deal with Netflix. For only $9.95 a month, and I get unlimited movies and unlimited TV shows. You got that same deal. It's amazing. The world is full of magnificent blessings, including cats. So thank you, Karen. Thank you for that wonderful invitation and introduction. And big hand for the band. And happy Easter. Happy Easter, everyone. I remember my father always telling me that Easter and Christmas, those were the 2 holidays when most people showed up for church. So whether we call this a church or a spiritual center, it is a divine holiday and symbolizing Christ's consciousness that is arising within all of us. True? Arising within all of us, and that's what this message is all about. So as we understand the 4 R words, message given by an R person, Ron. Right, Roger? Right. That we need to reveal, we need to look within, we need to understand, and release anything that is no longer serving us so we can rise. And of course, this process in our lifetime is repeated over and over and over again. You cannot get it done, but you'll never get it wrong. And to be able to reveal, we need to somehow be self-aware, aware of our thoughts, aware of what's going on, aware of our life. And we need to be open to things that perhaps are beyond what we would rationally think is possible. Be open to the unknown, be open to the infinite possibilities. And we also need to be honest with ourselves, honest with our feelings, because we're human. And sometimes we think, to cover that up, just be positive is going to work. No. We have emotions, and we need to be honest with those emotions. And especially men, because quite often we're told to, suppress our emotions. We've got to be strong. We can't be vulnerable. Well, vulnerability and being able to share is truly a starting point. Even to be able to be acknowledged that ourself is a starting point for the transition and awakening of the divine, of Christ consciousness within ourself. Jesus, of course, was what we call the great example, not necessarily the great exception, because we have that divine spark. We have that within all of us. And it's just a matter of going through this process and understanding that and awakening that. And so even myself, that feeling of not worthy, not good enough, emotions that have come up in my past, I've had to resolve those, and I still go through that. Don't we all? Yes. I know that years ago I was actually a salesperson selling a unique technology into the sign and graphics industry. There's computerized sign making. Before that, people were painting letters or they were using big die-cut letters, and I actually was an engineer. I left engineering, I went into sales, and I was given the territory of Virginia. Virginia is a very, very large state. And I lived in Newport News, and I drove all over Virginia. And after around 5 years of this endeavor, it takes a while to build accounts and build customers and get trusting relationships. And after about 5 years of this endeavor, I suddenly realized that something happened. I had a competitor. No, this is my state. And it wasn't my company, it was another distributor selling basically the same products and the same technology. It bothered me. And it wasn't so much, there was people in other states that actually had 2 or 3 or 4 competitors. I was lucky for 5 years, I didn't have anybody. And yet it bothered me that there was another individual that was walking through the doors of my accounts, stealing my accounts away. Not only that, he was younger than me, better looking, and he had more hair. But I realized, not at that moment, it wasn't until later, but I started to realize that even though I had graduated middle school, I still had these middle school type beliefs and reactions and behaviors, and it was really, really, really showing up every time that I would see him. Every time I would drive to one of the accounts, I'd always be looking over my shoulder, thinking that, he's following me around. But it wasn't until one particular account, and it was Busch Gardens, Florida. They have a sign shop, they call it their creative studio, and I had sold them everything, and this was like my prized account. I used to brag about Busch Gardens. I'm like, that's my account. Until one day, he stole that account away from me. This is war. I contained my emotions, a lot of those things I said to myself, but still, those feelings. Have you ever been there? Have you ever had that feeling like somebody's got your good? Why is that? The reality was, as time went on, I went to another territory. I actually traveled international. That's how I was able to meet my beautiful wife, Fani. So my world changed, and I kind of let it go, but still that person, I didn't like him. I don't know why I didn't like him. I just didn't like him because he was my competitor, even though I was now in a different mode, doing something differently. And then one day, the transformation that happened for me was one of the most difficult things. You see, there was an email that was sent throughout the entire network, all the distributors, all salespeople, everybody that we knew that was in our industry. And as I opened up that email, I realized he had just passed. I also realized there was a father with 2 daughters. They had gone on vacation to the Outer Banks of Virginia, or Outer Banks of North Carolina, and there were strong rip currents, and his daughter got caught in one, and he went to rescue her. She got rescued, he didn't. And my real awakening at that moment was, I'm grateful that I'm alive. And why did I feel this way towards another human being? And even to this day, that moment, anytime it resurfaces, anytime I think, nobody's really got anything better than any of us. We may perceive that. We may think somebody's better off, richer, or has more material wealth, or maybe they've got something that we thought was ours. We find this jealousy, this enviness, or for some reason, anger or resentment that comes up inside. But the truth is, we're all humans, and we're all trying to do the best. We're all trying to get along. We're all trying to live our life. And truly, this path of rising up is letting go any of those feelings towards another person. It's totally forgiveness. But the forgiveness happens within you. It's the energy that's within you. It's letting go of those thoughts and those feelings or the things that are holding us back. Now, to be able to go into a reveal process and to realize and to see things like this, again, it's being that state of being self-aware, really, really knowing truly what's going on, knowing our thoughts, knowing that the outer world is a mirror reflecting back to us the very things that are going on inside of us. Whether it's happening on the smaller level, through friends and families, relationships, our jobs, our health, our well-being, or whether it's on the global level. Everything that is happening is a reflection of the inner consciousness, either on the individual or on the collective. True? Everything is a reflection. So the mirror that's out there is shining back to the very thing that needs to be awakened, to be seen, to be brought to the light, to be healed. And that level of awareness is not easy to get at because we're so inundated with our life. So we don't always focus or pause and reflect and take that moment to really understand that I am an integral part of the divine matrix of the universe. That my beingness and my thoughts, change my life, change the world. That I have that much power within me. And to know that everything that's happening, good, bad, or indifferent, even those divine synchronicities or those coincidences or things we call luck, there's no such thing. And that which comes out of the blue is truly within you. And that's true. Everything that is unfolding is the ability to be aware and to see and to know that we're connected with that. And also be open to any infinite possibility. Sometimes we think within the box. We think the way society wants us to think. We're limited. We turn on the TV today, we see so many things that are going on in the world. That becomes our reality. We live within a culture. We're brought up within either a religious belief system or some other belief system, and we limit ourselves to what is possible for us. And even when we're visioning for a new minister, or even when we're seeking something greater, we don't know what that possibility is. And part of that is letting go of what we have defined as the way it has to be. Years ago, a friend of mine actually told me he was on a project in Africa, in a remote village in Africa. And they were building a two-story structure. And there probably was other two-story structures, but what was unique about this one was they actually had an elevator. For the very first time in this area, which many of the people in this village had never even seen an elevator. And the reality was, after the first day of installing the elevator, there were a few people that gathered. After the second day, after like 3 days, there was like a mass of people because the word was getting out about this thing called an elevator. And people stood there, but they stood away from from this elevator, just looking at it. Nobody would get on it. Nobody would get on it. Just the workers that worked there, my friend Brian and all his friends. They were the ones using the elevator. Until they realized that the perception of the villagers was this was some sort of mysterious, magical room where people would walk in and disappear. The doors would open and there would be nobody there. And then suddenly, somebody new would come out of that door. They couldn't understand this. It's that ability to see beyond what is. You know, sometimes we're in this structure, we're in this box, but it's the ability to see beyond it. If there is a disease that you think is uncurable, well, maybe there's a way. Maybe we just don't know that way yet. Just the other day, I saw an interview of a new device called Think Interfaces. It's actually thinkinterfaces.com. It's the most amazing device. It's using an existing technology, which is EEG. An EEG, which basically reads brain activity in the neurons. And what this lady did, she had done a lot of research with neurologists and with many other doctors and scientists. What she decided to do was to develop this device. They could understand brainwave patterns that were relative to ADHD, was relative to autism, and a few of these other conditions. And what she did was she found, well, if we can see what's going on, is there a way to be able to transfer through impulses back to the brain to help rewire the neurons? And if this could be done, and the other thing she decided to do is she wanted to make it fun. Because quite often, the medical world can be scary. The machines and the devices that we strap on or we get put through, or to me, just walking in a hospital, I feel my heart thump, right? It's just not a comfortable feeling. So she designed these machines as a video game because many of them were kids, and she wanted them to just sit there and play a game while they were strapped in, while they could read, understand, and feed these impulses. And it's like a medical breakthrough. Typically, most people take 5 sessions. Most people feel a result within their first hour. She's been able to transform people with ADHD that had to be on medicine, autism. There's one boy you'll see on that, if you go to that website where, you know, he's just incoherent. He's rocking back and forth. He can't even speak. And then after going through his first session, he's starting to be able to connect, to be able to articulate, to be able to do simple things such as read. It's worked with Parkinson's. It's worked with short-term memory loss and a few other things that they're actually working on. So the mind typically is limited. It's like that elevator that you don't know what that is because you've never experienced the elevator. But it's also the elevator symbolic of the raising of the Christ consciousness within all of us. And until we accept that and know that, and not just on an intellectual level, but till we feel it, that we know, as Jesus has said, these things you shall do and even greater things. And in that very words, that kingdom of heaven is within us, knowing the truth that we already possess that. And to accept change. Because sometimes change is one of the most difficult things. We're going through a lot of things on this planet. And change is probably, people resist it. They want things the same way. It's tradition. There was a book that said, Who Moved My Cheese? I don't know if anybody's ever read that. Yep. But at the same time, change can be a blessing because it breaks a habit. It opens a new doorway. It allows us to see things differently. And it creates miracles. And so when we say a prayer, and sometimes we end it, this or something better, means that the divine knows more than we know in our own limited thinking of how it should be. Perhaps this could be something better. The other day, Fani was making her cabbage soup. Now, Fani makes an amazing cabbage soup. And in this cabbage soup there's all sorts of vegetables. I don't know if I'll get it right. It's carrots, there's potatoes, there's garlic, I should probably have you up here tell but it's good. It's very, very good. And she's like, I'm going to make this. I'm like, great. She's like, I'm going to go to the grocery store. I'm going to get everything. I'm going to come home, and I'm going to make this. I'm like, couldn't wait for the cabbage soup. And so as I came downstairs into the kitchen, she's like, hon, I was wondering if you could help me with something. And I'm like, sure. Okay, do you mind going to the grocery store? I need one more item. Well, what could that be? I need a cabbage. Now, the name of it's called cabbage soup. And you would think that the one ingredient that you would absolutely need would be cabbage. So I went to the grocery store, and of course I go in, and she's like, don't worry about it, you just get one head of cabbage. Doesn't have to be the biggest head of cabbage, just get one head of cabbage. And I got cabbage. I come home, oh, that's red cabbage. This is, we experienced something new. Being able to have change. Actually, I think it's the most delicious. We need to call it Fani's red cabbage soup now. It's actually better, and if you look, I started to look up red cabbage, like Googling online, it's got like 10 times more vitamin A, it's got double the amount of iron, and it's got phytonutrients that you wouldn't typically find in the same levels in green cabbage. And it's delicious. It's a little purple, but it's the soup. The soup is absolutely perfect. So where in your life do you need to accept that red cabbage moment? Maybe we always want to define things. It's got to be this way. This is my plan. This is my perfection. This is my life. This is my partner. My partner needs to behave this way to me. The ideal job is out there for me somewhere. The condition that I have needs to get better. Well, sure. Part of it is releasing, understanding the thoughts behind it, releasing, but not necessarily defining as the way it has to be. To the allowing of knowing that the infinite can create the best red cabbage soup possible for anything in our life, allowing that to happen. And in the releasing, truly releasing any energy towards something or someone. And we all know we have this. Whether it's on an individual level or whether it's on a global level, right? Some people turn on a TV, and I know I used to do that. I just turn on a TV and it's like, oh no, I was mad at everything. But fundamentally knowing that which we hate, we create. That which we hate, we create. And if we look at the emotional vibrational scale, is this true? This is true for anchoring a memory or putting an intention out into the universe. A lot of it has to do with the emotion and the emotional energy behind it. So if you think about memory, you remember the painful moments. You also remember the blissful moments. I remember the birth of my 2 daughters. I remember marrying Fani. The painful moments, too, you also remember those. Any area of resentment, fear, blame, shame projected, blaming another, that which we hate, we create. We're giving more power to the very thing or the pattern within our thinking that creates a mental equivalent to show up of the same basic experience happening over and over again. True? This can happen in relationships. Sometimes one person's gone, the other one walks through the door, and we start to notice the same problems. And then we become aware, well, what's the common denominator? Oh, it's me. It's me. So when we release things, it's not about necessarily approving of what they did. It's not necessarily saying, that what they did was right, or even having to go to the point of unconditionally loving someone. We all want to get there. But if we can just release any energy that is not healthy that we are possessing towards something, someone, or some greater thing. And to know that that allows us to then rise in that level of consciousness. Because each of us really, truly, ultimately, is that divine presence. Quite often, I like to relate, God's presence in the world around me. And if I was to come across a beautiful flower, and I would say, well, who created this flower? Everybody? God. Yes, the divine source, the infinite intelligence. Did God leave this flower? God's still present with the expression of beauty within this flower. God creates the bird. God's full in the expression of the beautiful song that's within the bird. God creates the magnificent tree. And that magnificence of God is still existing. God doesn't leave the creation. So why is it that we don't necessarily always see that God is within us? We are that infinite presence. We are that Christ consciousness. We are the divine that is here. And when more of us realize, not only intellectually, but feel it within our heart, and we start to see the world the way we wish we want it to be, united with peace, with love, with joy, with abundance for all, we will create heaven on earth. It's a law. It will be instantaneous when we rise up in the consciousness of the Christ that is already within us. Let's take this beautiful moment into prayer. Feel free to settle in your seat, relax, or close your eyes and breathe. And as I know that this special moment of Easter, which is symbolic of Jesus Christ, but yet also of Christ consciousness, the divine within, I know that there is one source, one creator, one beingness, one essence that lives, breathes, and exists within all things, all space and time, future, past, and even in this now moment. It bursts out of itself the many magnificent creations of joy, of bliss, of happiness, of grace. And as I know that that Christ consciousness, that divine one, is present within me, I also know this same truth for all that are here within the Center for Spiritual Living, Cape Coral. I know the same truth for all of humanity. And with that, I proclaim that there is an everlasting expression of divine Christ consciousness that is present within all. There is the abundance, the grace, the beauty, the light, the love, the support, the expression of creative dreams. I know this to be true. It's with my feeling of gratitude that I release and let this go to the divine, for it is done. And together we say, so, namaste.